Okay, guys, welcome back to episode number 8 of the online coaching series. Today, we're going to dive a little bit into coaching sheets, so building them, what they need to include, and how they should look. Now, I want to make a little disclaimer kind of thing to start off with, just in that every single client requires a different set of coaching sheets, okay? Their goals are going to differ. No person will have the exact same starting position with the exact same goal and the exact same service delivery. So no two sets of coaching sheets should look the exact same. There's going to be similarities, of course, and I actually always recommend a template, and I'll explain why in a second. But with that being said, that no two sets of coaching sheets should ever look the same. So the reason I suggest the template, which I don't in principle for coaching, because I think everything should be bespoke, but if you were to sit here and design this on repeat every single time, it's going to be a huge waste of time. And the fact that it's going to differ from one person to the next slightly isn't professional. So we want to keep this baseline template here, and just from step 2 onwards, that's when the bespoke tailoring of service comes in. So the only element of template is the design, the branding, the what's actually included. So a training log, a check-in form, a tracker, that should be there. And then we tailor that. So we tailor their training, of course. We tailor their diet, of course. We tailor what needs to go into that tracker, etc., etc. But we'll come on to that in due time. So to begin with, what software do we use? Now, you can use Excel, you can use True Coach, you can use, is it My PT Hub or whatever else there is out there. I don't care. I'm just going to explain what I suggest. And that is, in my experience, Google Sheets seems to be the one. Mainly because, firstly, it's free, or near enough free anyway. And secondly, it's a live interactive document. So it gives you an opportunity to interact through the sheet with your client. So whatever you do, they can see. Whatever they do, you can see. And that obviously from a check-in process and a response and an adjustment to training and whatnot perspective is great. Because if you're sending out a training plan and they're coming back saying, oh, I haven't got a seated hamstring curl machine, so you change it to a lying hamstring curl, you've got to send it again, and it just gets lost and they get jumbled, and it's just not professional, constantly pinging forward and backwards. So having that Google Sheet structure where you make a change and it's just automatically updated for them, that's really, really important in my opinion. So that's what I suggest. In terms of software, I think Google Sheets is your best bet. Now, in terms of how it should look, the only thing that is going to be the same from person to person is just brand the hell out of it. Use your brand colors. If you don't have them, I'd get a set of brand colors in stone, Pantone them colors, and just spread them wide, whether it be through your Instagram, YouTube, logos, whatever, coaching sheets, the lot. Just get your brand colors in and amongst the sheet. So obviously you can see that Bullstrong is primarily a black and red brand with elements of white and grey in there as well, as you can see in the logo. This is actually the outdated Bullstrong logo, which is really non-professional of me. But the new updated logo of Bullstrong with the Pantone colours has got white and grey in the horn, hence why there's the white and grey here. And this is the set Bullstrong colour, so that's why I use them. I use green to differentiate from plus and core. Green is plus tier, red is core tier. But that's going to be something that we discuss more in terms of or later in the series. So anyway, getting into the nitty gritty, this is my coaching sheets, and they are separated into 4 individual Google Sheets. I like to have a hub, which is just a kind of cover page, cover art almost, where you get a bit of branding in there, you get a bit of sort of a headline, who the client is, what their goal is, and sort of just all that headlining data. So you can put whatever you want here. You don't have to copy what I'm doing, and I in fact suggest that you don't, because I doubt that you are targeting the exact same clients and delivering the exact same service that I am. There will be differences. But let's say that for whatever reason you decide you want to run with a similar principle to what I have. So obviously you're going to plug in the name, the service, maybe it's a plus tier or a core tier or whatever. Obviously their age and height. When did they start with you? So maybe they started on the 19th and maybe they weighed 81.8 kg. What day do they check in on? Do you have one check-in day? Could they check in any day? Hopefully by this point they've outlined their availability for a check-in day on their application form and you've confirmed that you're happy with that date. Maybe you've come to the agreement that they check in on Saturdays. What are their maintenance calories? So obviously you will use their anthropometric data to go in and select what their maintenance calories are. If you are unsure where to find a maintenance calorie calculator, I will show you where you can find one. Here at Bullstrong, we have a maintenance calorie calculator. So if you want to go and plug in your client's information, and you can then figure out what their maintenance calories are. So you can come back and you can put that in, which obviously is useful for you when gauging what calories they're going to be on in their diet to target their goal. So if their goal is a rapid fat loss phase initially, before they go into an off-season prior to prep starting, for example, you know in that rapid fat loss phase where those calories should start. How many steps are they going to be doing per day? Are they going to be doing 6,000 per day, or are you going to have it split between a training day and a non-training day, in which case we tell them here? Are they going to be doing any cardio? 300 calories per week maybe of cardio, or maybe they're doing none at all. What's their next event? Now, this is really important because when we set goals, they have to be smart. So they have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and have a time bound. So this is where that time bound element comes into play. So maybe they've got a wedding on the 26th of July next year, right? That gives them something, if I can type, to look forward to, something to visualize, an end goal, a deadline, a time bound. That is what this is here for. Maybe it's a competition, maybe it's a holiday, whatever it may be. Over here, we have more of what we like to call an action plan. So what is our physical plan? What are we going to do? Now, this is really useful for allowing the client to invest into you and the process and the service. Because ultimately, if the client doesn't have a vision and they don't really know what they're with you for, they're not going to stick around. Whereas if they know what they're here for, what the goal is, what's happening when, and exactly how the process is going to run, they're going to invest in that process a lot more. They're going to stick around for a lot longer. And so from a results and a business growth perspective, this is really, really important. So I always suggest having some form of overview, some form of vision to share with that client. So let's just switch the goal up now and say that we're working with a powerlifter. Maybe initially our focus is going to be hypertrophy, and maybe we run 2 back-to-back blocks here. Then we dip into a strength focus block, and maybe we run 2 back-to-back blocks there. Then we have an SBD competition variant focus. Then we move into a taper, or I should say maybe even like a pre-peak taper where we just bring some volume down. Then we go into our actual peak where we work up to some singles and we really sort of milk out every last kilo. And then we have a deload and comp day. Maybe that's how we're going to set the block up, or the meso up, and break it down into blocks. And this is their powerlifting preparation mesocycle, and this is the breakdown of it, individual blocks. Then we tell them what they're doing in training. So what their training going to look like. Maybe it's high volume, then volume tapers a little bit, then very low volume, then zero volume in the pre-competition deload, and then obviously our competition day SBD. Nutrition, maybe we're in a gaining phase throughout this whole entire phase, or maybe actually they're in and around where their body weight needs to be for the weight class, but in that last couple of weeks we're just going to taper it off just to make sure we have a nice easy cruise into that class. You let them know. What are their goals? Couldn't reiterate the importance of this anymore. I've already plugged them in with previous examples, but what is their short-term goal? So what's the initial plan, and what is the long-term goal? What's the first thing on the list, the first tick box to tick? And ultimately, what is the end goal? So where do all these little tick boxes amount up to? So an example would be, these are the little tick boxes. This is the end box here. This is the big box we tick off. And it's really important that that's always visualized and that's always updated as well when boxes are achieved. Little insight into supplementation. You can plug this into your nutrition tab if you like. I just have it here because it's easy to refer to for those guys. And also, they're going to be in and about here every single day. And to be honest with you, they don't necessarily need to see their supplements every day, because once they know what they are, it's just routine. Similarly with performance enhancing drugs, if they're running them, they know what they are. You don't need to, what drugs am I on now? They know. So we can keep it out the way on the hub, because naturally you won't really be on the hub all too much. And what I notice a lot of my clients do is just bring it right out the way over here after they've got started on their coaching plan, just so that they don't need to refer back to it all the time. Because essentially, once you've looked over it and you've had a glance at the start of every block, it's useless from there on out. Speaking more specifically then, training log. This is something that I like to use for their training, funnily enough. And again, you can format this however you like, and obviously you will tailor this to whoever you're working with. But I'm going to give you an example here of how I like mine to look. OCD was killing me there. In fact, it still is, but we'll ignore it for now. So this is where I like to program for my clients. Now, I have a 4-weekly plan, mainly because I work with a lot of powerlifters, to where I think as a powerlifter, if you can have a vision in advance of what your program is going to look like, week 1, 2, 3, 4, that really helps you invest into the process. And pulling back to that whole peak or pre-peak taper, as I called it, they're doing some sets of 4 here, and we're going to progress that into a triple, a double, a single. They know what that single is going to look like. That motivates them to tick boxes on the weeks running up to it. Whereas if they're just training with no real objective, and it's like, well, I've got set 4 today, they like sets of 4s are boring and they've got no interest in that, so they don't put effort in. But if they know what's coming and they understand the peak and they understand where that set of 4 leads to, they're going to put more effort in, right? Surely. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about programming specifically, because that's something that we'll come on to in a later video. But an example I always recommend using is 4 weekly programs. So you're programming in advance. Obviously, you don't just program 4 weeks and that's it, job done. We have to always be on top of it. And I've never once been able to just program 4 weeks in advance and just let it run, because once you've had all the feedback and the video footage and the conversations necessary with the client regarding this week, next week needs to be changed. And then the week after needs to be changed. But having that fundamental vision of where the block is going to roughly run is really, really useful. But anyway, we'll keep it simple for now. I like to make sure that my clients have somewhere to log, okay? Hence why it's called a training log. So within my sheets, I always make sure that there's somewhere they can log. So maybe once we've told them the exercise being a seated hamstring curl, it's really small text, I can't really see it all, but we'll roll with it. If I misspell something, let me off. Maybe they're running a top set of 5 to 9. Yeah, I really can't see here. And they're back off of 10 to 15. Their load, obviously, they're going to select, and their rest period, maybe want them to rest for 1 minute. Now, this isn't compulsory, but I have a lot of clients that enjoy the fact that I tell them how long they should roughly rest for. But always make it clear they can also regulate, and it's not too important that it is exactly what it is, as long as it's pretty much consistent every session. But that's all I want to go into for programming for now, because we'll cover that in, ironically, the programming video. Nutrition, equally, something that we'll cover when we look at nutritional programming. But what is that client going to receive from you? Are they going to be given macronutrient targets? Are you going to just give them a macronutrient target where maybe they're carb cycling and you want to know that's all you need to do? Or is it? This is most likely not good enough. For a few rare scenarios when we're dealing with extreme lifestyle clientele, potentially just a macronutrient target is enough. But even then, I'd argue that there's going to be space for some micronutritional recommendations, especially things like sodium and water we obviously have to account for. But I'd even arguably go further and start adding in potassium, magnesium, calcium, zinc maybe. What are they going to be aiming for? And if they're going to track on MyFitnessPal or the Bull Strong Meal Planner or anything like that, then obviously we can actively track that, and so it's easy for the client to use. If you're dealing with more of an advanced clientele, you may want to look to Chronometer instead of MyFitnessPal or the Bull Strong Meal Planner, because ultimately Chronometer is better and it gives you a better insight into the micronutritional values of your foods. By which point then you may as well offer a diet plan. Now, this is something that I recommend you offer a surcharge for, because I'm telling you from experience, it takes a lot longer to build a diet plan, because not only have you got to ensure that it meets the macronutrients, and it's also got to meet the micronutrients, the schedule, the demands for that client. So what time are they training, and where does the carbohydrates need to go? Where do we want the majority of the fats and proteins to go? What have we got to work around? Are they working on a construction site, in which case they need easily preppable and easily eatable on-the-go meals? Are they working in an office where they need something that they can eat without a lot of mess or a lot of noise? We've got to think about these things and consider them. And this is where I think people overlook the amount of time it takes to properly write a diet plan. And that's why I always recommend charging more if you're going to offer a diet plan as part of your service. But again, How are we going to structure this? Do we want breakfast that is going to be different from training day to non-training day, or is it going to be the same on both days? Or are we just going to completely void this off and just have a one day of food? You know, these are the things you've got to consider, but we'll cover the specifics again when we come to the programming of the diet. Finally, then, the last sheet that I always recommend that we have within our coaching sheets is a tracker and a check-in form. This can be split up into two. This can be formatted however you like. And obviously, again, it needs to be tailored to the athlete, because here I've just pulled out my generic tracker. You can see that this is most certainly not even suitable to a female at this stage, because we haven't even got any method of menstrual tracking here. But again, this in principle is how I want you to think about designing your coaching sheets. Nothing here I want you to ignore. In fact, I'd even go to the point of deleting these, because I don't want you to look at them, because I feel as though you may think that this is all that you need, or maybe that you need all of these. Not the case whatsoever. Some people will not need a dietary compliance tracker, because they will be able to tell you what this is, and you know what their macros are, therefore you can calculate their compliance already. Some people will be on a diet plan where they don't respond well to having a lot of responsibilities. So we remove macro tracking entirely and have them strictly follow the diet plan, in which case they just need a compliance score. How well did you adhere to it? And then they explain if they missed any meals in the additional notes. Some people have an incredibly high stress attached with tracking sleep, to the point where the stress of worrying about how well they're sleeping on a data perspective actually keeps them up. So we don't have them track sleep, and we just tell them they just tell us how they feel when they wake up. Maybe your client is female, in which case we need to add a menstrual tracker. What days are they bleeding? Because otherwise, we're never going to know what stage of that menstrual cycle they are in, and we are never going to be able to correlate that body weight data to the phase of the menstrual cycle that they are in, or the physique shots, and understanding why maybe there's more water retention or less. And these things obviously have to be considered. So when we come to designing a weekly tracker, I'll explain this in more detail. But fundamentally, within your coaching sheets, we need to have some form of tracker, and then we need to have some form of check-in. Now, this check-in can be done however you like. You can have them send you a voice note. You can have them send you a video. You can have them just simply write out here. It doesn't matter. As long as you get some context to apply to their data and an analysis of the week that they've had, that's fine. That's pretty much all you need. Now, again, I'm speaking from a generic basis here, but the principle, you just need to know the data from the week, an analysis of the variables that are important, and their thoughts to go with it. Hopefully that's cleared up a little bit of an introduction to coaching sheets, guys. As I say, this video wasn't going to be specifically targeted at the specifics of training, diet, tracking, and check-in. It's more just a case of looking at the contributors to what come together to be your coaching sheet. So what sheets we have within there. And hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into kind of what you want within your coaching sheets, and how to structure them.